Hello, friends, and welcome to Talking with Mad People. I'm host Eric. I'm here with the amazing light bulb who's currently chopping green potato chips. Oh, wait, no, those are spinaches. Regardless, I'd like to make a video that's somewhat about INFP healing, somewhat about uh, mental well being and self development, and somewhat about mental health, and somewhat about being a YouTube creator. So the other day, I received some texts from somebody, some random number out of the blue, that indicated that this person was reaching out for help in some capacity. That she felt as though she were in a difficult spot in life and wanted some sort of guidance, but was fairly vague in the initial text. And I responded saying, "I'm not quite sure what to make about this, but um, just to err on the side of caution, if you're since a lot of this stuff's kind of dark sounding, just don't harm yourself." I was saying it in voice to text, and it said, "Don't warm Arizona." And then it sent that, and then later I realized that it said, "Don't warm Arizona," and I sent, "Don't harm yourself," as a correction. So initially, she figured she was warming Arizona too much, but uh, now she knows better, I guess. Anyhow, so tonight at dinner, she called me. Earlier today, she texted again, and she was saying some things about some people trying to record her and stuff, and named a couple of names. And I said, "Well, I don't know who either of those people are." And so she called me, and so I went out from the table at dinner, and I went outside and I talked to her for a while. She sounded really young, um, but it's hard to say. It was hard to say just by the sound of her voice. Regardless, she asked me some questions about whether I had received emails instructing me to put messages in my videos that are actually messages to her, and that I'm part of this conspiracy or some sort. And I explained that no, that's definitely not the case. And she revealed that she was concerned she might be becoming schizophrenic. So I said, "Well, the things you're saying are consistent with that self-diagnosis. I would suggest you go see a mental health professional, and they do have a pill for schizophrenia. They give them something that makes them less schizophrenic. I don't know. So you should go do that," is what I told her. And then I said, "Well, I got to go back in. It's my Mother's Day dinner with my mom, and I got to go back in." So I did. Then on the way back from dinner, right in the car, I got a text uh, saying, "Who the fuck is this? This is my daughter's phone." Blah, blah, blah. So the person's mother, obviously she was young apparently, had gotten a hold of her phone and was, I guess, alarmed, concerned. So I said, "Okay, well, read the whole text, read all the text that have gone back and forth between us, and then if you are concerned, call me, and I'll talk to you about it." So she did call, and launched in with the, how do you know my daughter? How did you get her number?" Like, I do not know her. I have never contacted her. I don't have the only reason I have her number is because she called me. She initiated the text. You read them. They're perfectly ordinary in the sense that, I mean, they're like somebody reaching out for help and the other person being a decent human and saying, "Don't harm yourself." You know. So at the end of the conversation, the mom was like, "Okay, I'm sorry she called you. Why did you call this man? How did you get your number?" Like, well, it's in the channel contact information, probably. I mean, it is, but most people can't find it or don't find it. But I do get randomly contacted by people sometimes, and I don't mind.
We mind if you show up though at our house.
Yeah, don't show up unannounced, please. Don't show up at my house unannounced. That would be preferable for sure. Anyhow, I hope this person is fine. I hope she's happy and good in life ultimately, and um, safe, yeah. And I wish her all the best. And I just want to make this video to say, in general, certain kind of mental health issues are beyond the scope of cognitive functions, or beyond the scope of some random guy making YouTube videos to solve. And in fact, they're beyond the scope of anybody, any human being to solve, but they're not beyond the scope of medicine. So medicine can't maybe fix it flawlessly. Maybe there are some side effects to some of those drugs. I understand there are. I've never taken any of them, but it's better than being subject to delusionary understandings of the world, to the extent that there's, by all measures I could tell, wholly genuine belief that this conspiracy, which somehow I got roped into, was a real thing. So, I mean, you don't obviously want to go through life unable to distinguish reality from fiction and or delusion. So, I would recommend anybody who's got significant concerns about mental health to go see a mental health professional. However, that doesn't stop me from wanting to provide for her the INFP healing video that she asked for before I even had these conversations today in the comments. And what I would say about INFPs in general, and healing and damage and all that kind of stuff, is INFPs are subject to damage probably more than any other type. The two FI DOMs are obviously going to be the most subject to damage. They're going to feel the weight of shit strongly. They feel the weight of every loss. They're going to feel the weight of every shortness and lack
change.
Every change, they're going to understand the significance of what they have and also what they don't have. And it's going to be hard for them to let go of things and all sorts of stuff like that. If you get an INFP who's had a really abusive childhood, then they're probably borderline personality disorder when they grow up. Now, that's not a mental health issue in the way that schizophrenia is. It's a behavioral issue, really, a cognitive habit issue, which basically says if you have borderline personality disorder, it's not called borderline because it's sort of a personality disorder. That's not why it's called. It's because it has to do with people's borders and their limits and their expectations and stuff. So people with BPD, they weren't loved properly as a child, and they internalize that deeply. When they get into an adult relationship, they expect their significant other to love them as though they were a child unconditionally and demand of them nothing and be subject to their demands, their parents should have been when they were little but weren't. And so it creates this phenomenon of I hate you, don't leave me. I hate you. And they go, okay, well, fine, I'm gone. Don't leave me. Well, you hate me, but don't leave me. And I hate you. Okay, well, don't I get to have something too here? BPD people are insanely selfish in their relationships. They expect a relationship to provide for them everything, and they should be required to provide only on their terms. So it's difficult. If you're a damaged INFP, you run the risk of expressing in that fashion because any damage done to you by people you trust or love or value or are biologically significant, like your parents, if you're an INFP, is going to be internalized. It's going to be felt at full weight, and it's going to be something that they carry with them most or much of the time. As somebody who's FI polar, I'm very accustomed to being able to distract myself away from my emotions, even when things are bad, when things are rough. This morning was a bit of a rough morning around the Lee Strauss residence, and yet when Cam went back inside after we did a big fight, I just sort of distracted myself away from emotions for a little while and could kind of forget about them. That's not possible for INFPs, and it's not really possible for ISFPs, and as a consequence, they are necessarily going to be very cautious as they move through life in terms of making firm choices about relationship stuff. And that, for example, both Kim and I, prior to this relationship that we're in now with each other, were in relationships with INFPs. And both those INFPs were married, and neither one of them could make up their mind for shit about what they wanted to do. They, because it doesn't matter how much they despise their spouse now, they still have invested in it all the time, energy, and emotion. And for an INFP, emotions aren't just like ideas for an ENTP. Well, just throw it away, another idea come up. They're things that weigh you down and burden you, and also give life significance and meaning and importance, and it's why shit matters. But you know, it means that they're aware ahead of time. Oh, if I leave my husband for Eric, if I leave my wife for Kimberly, um, I'll feel the loss intensely. I'll know that loss deeply, and it's not something like I'll be able to shake exactly. Maybe I'll get over it, so to speak, but I'll still carry with me the psychic trauma. So INFPs, as a consequence, are likely to stay in bad relationships, but may not be faithful. They have a problem with following through or doing or pulling the trigger or being opportunistic or anything that requires them to act, especially if that action is in keeping with uh, an framework, right? They got fourth slot TE, so they can plan a little bit, but they really rather have somebody else do that. And trying to take decisive action when you can't determine really what you feel or how you feel, how you're going to feel about it long term, or you know that you're going to have mixed feelings, or you know that you have mixed feelings now, which is more likely to be describing INFPs or ISFPs. It makes it tough for you to feel as though any choice is a good choice if it changes the status quo in ways that cost you things to which you have some sort of emotional attachment. No matter how much brighter it might look on the other side of it, you never get to shed that weight. It sticks with you forever, and you've already got so much of it. If you had a bad childhood, then you know you're you're swimming around in pain that you can't ignore because you're an INFP, and all you can do is ideate about possible ways this pain might go away, possible ways that situations might develop that would affect you emotionally, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then never really take the action to manifest it. So if you're looking at INFPs as for a healing protocol, quote unquote, well, I don't have a lot of really great suggestions or anything here, but I would say number one, they need to create stuff. Really, I think everybody with extroverted intuition in the 1-2, or probably introverted intuition in the 1-2 either, uh, needs to create. They need to make stuff that is an expression of self, or an expression of what they observe, or an expression of possibility, or some sort of expression that takes the self and renders it into a time object, a piece of media that has an identity and is existent in the world outside of the self. For INFPs and INTPs with SI in the third slot, you've got a great desire to understand and define the self in a way that's resonant with authentic valuings and desires and expressions. The world doesn't offer us anymore a lot of opportunity to attain those kind of authentic expressions of self through um, significant things like becoming the king or something. Uh, it's just there's so many people in the world that significance is manifest in smaller ponds. So really, what the INFP or INTP wants to do is create this linear progression of instances of self that thread together across a theme for the INFP of authenticity, for the INTP of consistency and sort of FE accomplishment kind of stuff, that they feel is whole and resonant. So if you know in advance that there is no perfect whole and resonance here, because there'll always be a certain amount of bittersweet emotions and things, and that your emotions can't be predicted entirely, how you're going to feel about this choice to leave your wife for Kimberly, let's say, or leave your husband for Eric, let's say, how you're going to feel about it a year from now. So you'll never pull the trigger. And then there's a failure to understand by INFP that not making a decision is making a decision. So Kimberly's no longer available. It doesn't matter if Kenneth leaves his wife now and shows up on the doorstep and says, "I'm ready, Kim." Too late. Same with Helen. She can leave her husband now and show up at my doorstep. I ship her back to the state from whence she came. Why? Because I'm taken. It's too late now. And I love Kimberly.
And she loves you.
And she loves me too. So Kenny and Helen can deal with the awful regret of that which was not done. Now it's like I don't regret it. I'm glad they made those choices because I ended up where I wanted to be. And I think it would have been a disaster if it had ended up the way I was trying to get it to be. But anyway, I imagine both those parties have regrets because they knew that what they had wasn't right. And they knew that what they were playing at was better. But they couldn't pull the trigger. And in the end, they lost because of that. They chose to stay with their wedded partners despite cheating on them. And it's like, there's no reason to stay with somebody if you're going to cheat on them, as far as I'm concerned. But they don't understand it from a practical perspective like that. They understand it from an emotional perspective. And their emotions, being authentic, told them, I love my spouse in certain ways, and I feel as though I owe my spouse, and also I hate my spouse, and also I love Eric/Kim, and also they bug me by not being what I want them to be, and also, it's like a bunch of different conflicting emotions. Well, what do you expect's going to happen? So the thing is, INFPs have to create as much as you can. I'd say, when in doubt, use your TI. I believe INFPs to actually be possibly the smartest type. I just, there's something about them that they've got excellent TI, though they don't use it when it matters. But I think if you're going to make progress, INFPs, use the TI when you can. It's better, way better than you think. And way more useful than you think, more importantly. It's much more useful than you think. Using a disinterested calculus is valuable. And, one thing else, to bring this full circle and then bring the video to a close, unless anybody here in the room wants to chime in, we'll give everybody a chance. But I just want to say, that's one thing that the person who called me ought to be proud of herself for, which is she sought data, honest data from a person who she thought might be objective about things. And I was able to provide that to her. If you can do that, that helps a lot, right? Seeking out objective data, seeking out an objective third party to do the disinterested calculus on your behalf is a valuable way to get a clearer understanding of things. But ultimately, INFP, your realization is attained through extroverted sensing, your polar function. Just as my realization is attained through introverted feeling, understanding that at the end of the day, I have to have things that I find precious and value. things that will hurt if I lose them, because that's what gives weight and meaning to life. So do what you got to do is the thing. Do what you got to do. Make the hard choice sometimes, even though it's going to be painful, because the one thing we can do for ourselves really is to make the future better than the present. And that's about it. So if we don't, we're cashing in our later years for our present habits. You don't want to be like me and waste your first 41 years drunk. Or I wasn't drunk as a newborn baby, but I guess I didn't really become a drunk until like late 20s. I don't know. Anyway, regardless, you don't want to waste a decade plus drunk or 2 decades having problems like that. You're much better off pulling the trigger and saying, I refuse to sell my interest in the future. It's the entirety of me yet to come. It's my only one and only life opportunity. I'm not going to fucking waste it on my attachment to being wrong. And that's what it is. If you're having serious problems of some sort, like alcoholism or mental health issues or a total lack of objectivity, there's another party who has been contacting me who's just... Not everybody has an easy time doing a disinterested calculus about the self, but at the end of the day, if you want to make progress, you got to step back. You got to go, okay, time for me to be accountable. What can I find that is my fault? Now, or in INFP's case, it's a little bit different. It's, what do I need to do, and how am I going to actually do it? So for that caller, she needs to go see a mental health professional and get professional diagnosis. I'm not equipped or qualified or interested, frankly, in diagnosing her. I don't know whether she had anything wrong with her at all. But what I do know is that the conspiracies that she was presenting as likely are completely delusional. I've never had it. I don't have any idea who this person is, or have any contact with some third parties pulling strings behind the scenes and what I put on my videos or anything like that. So I'd recommend, as a consequence, that pull the trigger, do the thing you got to do, go to the mental health professional, get a pill, whatever. And for other INFPs who are suffering, same advice. Use the disinterested calculus you can, seek a third party, and pull the fucking trigger and do what you got to do. Just like I got to feel moist. So anybody in the room want to comment on anything I just said, or anything else, or whatever? Let's see what this says. Somebody put a chat. Come on, chat, open up. Stop saying pull the trigger. Shh, okay. Well, I went with that instead of my original plan, which involved a racial slur. I thought I'd go with trigger, but if you want me to say it the original way, fine. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. And thanks for watching. And Chick who called me, you're going to be just fine. And Chick's mom, relax. I'm cool. I'm not interested in being weird. I got a woman. I got a daughter, 19. I'm not like that.